Alright, so as we all know, the new 2024 Player's Handbook is now out in the wild for anyone to buy, peruse, and use. And today, well, last night, but I spent more time looking through it today, I found what's potentially a game-breaking exploit that, as far as I'm concerned, at any table I DM at, it's not going to work the way it is written in the book, and no DM anywhere should allow this rules as written because it will break your game. So, that being said, here we go. So, largely, Polymorph works the same way as it did in the 2014 Player's Handbook. The big difference, though, is rather than taking on the monster's hit point stat when you transform, now you transform and then you get bonus temporary hit points equal to the stat block hit points of the beast you're transforming into. The giving you the hit points takes place after you transform, and the way the spell is worded, as you can see from the description that's here, you revert back if you run out of temporary hit points. But as we all know, there are two other ways for you to revert back. The first of which is for the caster to lose concentration on the spell. The second is for the caster to willingly drop the spell. So you have three ways to end the spell. The first one, losing all of the hit points, completely irrelevant for what I'm about to discuss. The second one is substantially more important, dropping concentration on the spell, or the third one, willingly ending concentration on the spell in order to end the effect of the spell. That will either way revert you back to your normal character. However, the way the spell is written in the book, you will keep the temporary hit points. There's nothing in the spell description that you can read on screen right here. This is from the book on D&D Beyond. There's nothing whatsoever that says you lose the hit points when you transform back. And as I stated moments earlier, you don't gain the hit points until after you transform. They're part of the same spell, but they're also not. It's weird the way they wrote this. So here's what that means. First and foremost, a high enough level character can be transformed into a giant ape, which, going off of the 2014 Monster Manual, has, if memory serves, about 150 hit points. So if you were to polymorph somebody into that using the new version of Polymorph, they would gain 150 temporary hit points. And the problem with that is then you can immediately end the spell. They revert back to themselves, and they keep the 150 temporary hit points. This is a problem, because if that's on a barbarian, they go into a rage, and therefore have resistances to nearly every damage type, depending on what barbarian they are, which makes them basically unkillable. And a sorcerer using Twin Spell Metamagic can start the adventuring day by polymorphing two of the party members into this creature, dropping it, twin casting it again, and finishing off the rest of the party. And now your entire adventuring party has 150 temporary HP to start the day. And that's really, really not okay as a DM. You're not going to want to let your party do this because it will break your game. Your characters will basically be unkillable. And that's a problem. Like, there's a lot of ways you can work around it, but that's a problem. Now, I know what you're thinking. Back in the 2014 book, if you read the rules for temporary hit points, it basically gives you three conditions under which they go away. The first of which is if the spell or effect that gave you the temporary hit points ends. The second of which is if you take, I believe, a short or long rest. And the third is obviously if they're depleted or overwritten by a different effect that gives you a greater number. Now, if you look at the rules, here for the 2024 Player's Handbook, they're very similar. but you'll notice that they only go away on either a long rest, so they last through short rests, or if they're depleted. There's nothing in there whatsoever about them going away when the spell that granted them ends. So, Polymorph's granting of hit points will last until those hit points are gone, or a long rest, whichever comes first. So yeah, to finish this off, don't let your players do this at your table. If they try, just tell them no. Let them do the polymorph however they want, but when they end the polymorph, remove the hit points. It's the only way to let the spell work as it's meant to work, while keeping the game fair for you as the DM. So yeah, hopefully this gets errated, because rules as written, this is game break.